Hi, I'm Everett. Welcome back to the shop. Thanks for joining in. We're going to continue on today with the build on this Alba shaper. We'll get the lever arm in with all the hardware we need to finish up making. We'll get the ram sliding by the lever arm. We still don't have a motor in it. We don't have the clapper box or the table assembly put into it yet. But it's, again, that's slowly coming. I'm just working at it as I can find time amongst other things in life, and sometimes things get busy. So I hope you find it interesting and stick around. Now, the next step we have to make is to make the little block and the stud that goes into the T-slot on the bowl gear. This is the clobbered up mess that was in there. I don't even know where this fastener came from originally. It's looking pretty rough. And the threads are messed up. This little block is what was sitting in the bowl gear, and it doesn't even fit the slot very well. I've taken a measurement of the slot. It's 1 inch 60 thousandths across, and about 5/16 deep, a little more than 5/16. So I have some 5/16 plate here, cold rolled. What we'll do is we'll make the plate out of this, and this is our little bar of 4140 precision ground shaft. We'll make a stud out of this and thread it into the little block, and then I may even take and put a tack weld on the back just to keep it from coming loose. Once that's made, we're going to use this piece of mild steel again and make something very similar to this. This is the stud and the nut that were originally sitting on top of the ram that clamped the ram to the lever arm, and I'm thinking that, just doing the, math or whatever, I should be able to get my hex out of this piece of 1 inch round. This is the same one we made the other nut out of. It's nice because this will fit in the collet block on the mill, and I can use that for cutting a hex. So yeah, what we'll do is we'll start by making the little block. Because the hole itself, because the T-slot is 1 inch 60 thousandths. I wouldn't mind a little bit of clearance. We'll do 1 inch 20. Cut this out with a little bit of extra material outside the lines, and then we'll use the mill to clean it up on the outside edges and drill the hole. We're going to tap it using Whitworth threads just because the rest of the machine's Whitworth. I want to stay as factory original as I can as far as, fasteners and such. And yes, I realize that means that the nut we're going to make is going to fit, well, the 7/16 Whitworth, even though it's, half-inch Whitworth thread. Again, the British wartime emergency standard. But, and I realize this means that I'm going to have to use a Whitworth wrench to change stroke length. That's fine. It's just something weird. I want to keep it as original as I can as far as threading. So that's the next step. We'll make this little square and then make our stud out of the 4140 and then make the little nut. Alright, got the block roughed out. I have probably about a 1/16 little over between the line and this surface here, like the cut surface, and it's a little crooked, but yeah, we'll fix that. Alright, just need to deburr that, and then we'll mark out and drill the center. In the Zeus chart for Whitworth threads says 1/2 inch, needs a 10.5 millimeter drill or a .4134. A letter U drill is a 0.413, so that's going to have to do. And this is mild steel, so my 1/2 inch Whitworth tap should survive it. There. Because this is a carbon steel tap, I'm really not interested in trying to power tap with it. There we go, a little bit of the threading motion lotion. Ooh, it's starting to slip already. Yeah, it's starting to slip. And on this size of tap, yeah. So what we'll do is we'll take the drill chuck handle off. And we'll just use a regular handle. And I'm afraid that Jedi Master will be disappointed in me because I didn't chamfer the hole before I threaded it. So there's the little block that goes in the T-slot on the bull gear. Now, in making the little nut that's going to go on the stud for holding the sliding block to the bull gear, I want to do something along the lines of this, which is the nut that goes on the stud that holds the ram to the lever arm. Just want a nice tall nut. So what I've done is I've already set the work stop so that it comes up to the same point every time. We only need to take 90 thousandths off each side of each side of the hex, which means that we can just barely get the 820 thousandths across the flats, which is what's needed for the Whitworth size that we're working with here. So what I'll do is I'm going to touch off, slide off, come down 90 thousandths, in. We'll move the vise back and forth a little bit to make a square shoulder, back it off. We'll rotate the collet block and keep doing that all 6 sides. Again, it's going to be a 1/2 inch Whitworth thread through the center, but because we're still sticking with the wartime standard of this machine, we're going to use the 7/16 Whitworth wrench, and that fits quite nicely. So, quick deburring of that, and we'll cut it off in the bandsaw, and then we'll set it up on the lathe to drill and tap the center. Now the final 3 steps on this, well, nut blank here if you will, is to face this end, drill it out to a letter U drill, and then run the 1/2 inch Whitworth tap through it. There we go, that's flat. Alright, so I've got it started straight in the piece of work using the lathe and the drill chuck in the lathe. What I'm going to do is I'll pull this out as it sits, and then use the tap handle and finish it off in the vise. Just because I'm having a hard time holding it by the shank in the drill chuck, and this is a carbon steel tap. There is no way I'm even going to try power tapping. Now I want to make the stud about 3 1/8 long, and that's going to be going from this shoulder right here. This end piece here is going to all get turned off because I have the center point drilled into the end. So that's our overall length. We'll be making a little undercut for this section up here, because that's going to be where it needs to be threaded to go into the block that goes into the T-slot. And so we go up here, and that would be 1.5 inches to there. I only want to thread the first 1.5 inches here. We don't need to go full length thread on this. I suppose we could, it wouldn't really hurt anything, but I don't really think we need to. So what we're going to do now is turn this section here and this section here down to 492 thousandths or so, about 8 thousandths under, and then take and put a little relief groove here and here, and then single point thread this section. I'll probably just do this end with a die just because it's so short. Well, it's starting to take shape. Before we do anything here, before I get too crazy, I'm going to use the nut that's going to go on there as its, as its gauge, and that. Oh, it's starting, but it's still a little rough. Goes a ways on, and I know it's a 12 TPI because I did check. All right. Couple more spring passes and we should be good. Yeah, there's a, well, I mean, we still have a little bit of roughness to the threads because we just cut them, but oh, that, I like that fit. Barely any play in it. Excellent. That I'm happy with. And little man's playing across the shop there, so I like that. I'm happy with that thread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this off with a hacksaw, and then we'll mount it up a little closer. We'll face this off, flip it around, and then thread that end. I like that. I like that. One of the reasons I didn't thread it all the way, gives me a little shoulder to grab on. There we are. All right, so a little bit of threading motion on there and on the die. We're just going to use a die to cut the threads on this end. Mostly because of the fact that I don't want to... There. I don't want to have to try stopping short on that short of a single point thread. Oh dear. There. Wow. I may have to do this in the vise. So I finished off the end of that little bit of thread with the die stock and die, just because it's a very short one. As I say, I just use the lathe to get the thread started and then finish it off with that one. So what we'll do is we'll use a little bit of brake cleaner, non-chlorine style. Rinse off the nut as well. Come on. There. Get out the left-handed socket set. There we go. Got it right where I like it. The end of the stud is just sub-flush of the square. That gives me a little bit of space to fill in with weld. And yeah, otherwise, there's our stud. So we think we've got all the hardware we need to get the lever arm installed in the housing now. I mean, actually, probably even to set the ram on and, you know, attach it to the lever arm. Here's our clobbered up old clamping bolt and T-nut, if you will, that was sitting in the bull gear. There was a bit of a change of design once I got into it. I made the one that was 1 inch 20 across and didn't like how it fit. It was really kind of sloppy in the slot. So what I did was I went and, you know, I wound up making another one that was, you know, just a few thousandths narrower than the slot. Rounded the corners a little bit, give it a bit of a radius. This one here slides in really nicely. And I used the stud that we made. And the only downside is I found that this precision ground shaft was actually ½ an inch, and the slot itself in a couple spots was just a little bit narrower. So I just relieved the end there by a few thousandths. Now it slides right through and it's a really nice fit. I also had one other change of heart, and I didn't weld it, but I used the really high strength Loctite to hold it in place, grammed it down nice and snug. Yeah, that'll work just fine for what we're doing. So that'll go in the T slot of the bull gear. Then, you know, you'll have the bull gear T slot top itself. You got the block on the little bushing, washer, and the Whitworth nut we made with a nice snug fit, or, well, it's not snug, but it's a nice fit on the threads. There we go. That's what's going to drive the lever arm. And as far as the lever arm's concerned, I also did a little bit of draw filing, a couple spots. Now it slides nice and smoothly all the way along. Only other note I was going to say is, as far as this block's concerned, this sliding block, I don't know about how it's, yeah, as far as keeping the slides here lubed, I'm going to run with it as it is, because the other one, well, the old one didn't have anything for lubrication on the sides. I'm almost tempted at some point to just cross drill with some very small holes in the top here, just to catch that, you know, that stream a little bit. Maybe at some point, I'm not going to do it now, I'll just keep it greased, or, you know, manually oil it or whatever. But I'll do that down the road if necessary. Now this is the little stud that used to hold the lever arm on the top here to the ram. Because ½ inch Whitworth 12 TPI ready rod is not really available at our local hardware store, I just went and made up another small chunk of threaded rod out of that 4140. Did the same thing as I did on here, so I didn't really think I needed to show it. Took the nut. I want to reuse as much original equipment as possible. So I cleaned up the nut, ran a tap through it, and yeah, it goes on Not a whole lot of play, a little bit, but not much. It's still acceptable. So that will go in the end of here. And what I'll do is I'll just double nut and then snug it into place. And then once you get your ram on, the washers, and that'll snug down to hold it in place. I don't have the little indicator arm that goes to the scale on the side showing your stroke. At some point, once I get this thing functioning, I'll probably make one of those, but for now the washers will do. So I suppose we can go over to the shaper and try installing this. Now, I have heard from others, and some of the different internet posts and forums and such, that getting the lever arm here back into the housing through the top is a bit of a turd if you have everything in place. The thing is, we shaved a little bit off the side here, and I found just for dry fitting that it actually fit, it looked like it was going to slide in there. Before I put it in though, I'm going to take a little bit of grease and I'm going to smear it on the gears, because that's what the book says as far as what it needs for lubrication. So rub a little bit on the bull gear here. I haven't smelled this stuff in a while. Like I say, I worked for however many years in an auto shop, and the smell of grease is everywhere. Haven't really had much need for it since. There's much of a need for it since moving home, or moving my toolbox home. Yep. And I'm being very careful as I manually rotate this machine to make sure my fingers are out of the way. That's one thing about working on a piece of machinery you're on your own versus having somebody else there with you, is you feel your own fingers pinch if something goes sideways. All right. There are oil ports on the side for squirting oil into things. I'm also going to take some of this stuff and we're going to smear it into the fork where the pin goes. I see a little hole right here that looks like it'd be just about the right angle to get an oil can and squirt in there. And maybe at some point I'll use an oil can and do that. But for now, this at least gets us started for assembly. I'm going to go wet my hand. So now we take our lever. Because I took a little bit off that side, I think that's what bought me the extra little bit of forgiveness to be able to, come on, I had it in there a moment ago. There, there we are. Slide it by and put the fork onto the pin. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting excited. Now, one thing I did notice is right here where the brazing is, I'm hoping there'll still be enough clearance there to that bull gear once this thing is in operation. So we'll see how this all plays out. All right. So now take our T-bolt and remember, there. Now slide block goes in. Just putting a thin coat of grease on that guy, just so we have a little bit of assembly lube. That, and then a washer here, and our lever arm nut. Which for now we'll just snug up with the open end. If I were actually going to cut something, I'll use a socket. That's cool. At least we have the right kind of motion happening. Maybe I will just put a thin layer of grease on the, might just put a thin layer of grease on that, on the inside of the lever arm, just for assembly. Yeah. Snitch some off the side of the bowl gear that I squeezed out. There we are. So that's a good sign. And then again, that brazing is touching there, so we'll have to see how that goes with when the lever arm's actually installed. All right. Next step is we'll put the ram on. I got to get the tape and stuff off first, though. Well, with a little bit of messing around off camera, I came to the realization I'm going to have to pull this block out, back out, and let the lever arm basically go slack into the back of the case in order to slide the ram back on. So I'll pull, come on, pull the block back out. Okay. All right. Just like that. Now I should be able to slide that ram back in. As I say, this thing's been apart for a few weeks, so I'm sure I could be provided a little bit of slack and a little bit of leeway for getting a step. Not like it's a 68 RFE transmission. I mean, I've had so many of those apart that probably almost do it blindfolded, but even then, haven't done one of those in over a year. So the thing is, it's getting a little bit late at night right now, but I want to see this on there before I go to bed. And sadly, the ramways do show a little bit of wear. One spot that looks like it may have had some grunge in it at one point. There we are. But it's just gonna have to do. Come on. All right. Oh, ha 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 ha. All right. We are now ready to pull that arm up. There we are. As I say, I don't have the little pointer needle to go down to the stroke indicator yet. There. All right, that is cool. Looks like we're starting to achieve success here. Now I'm going to have to do a little bit of research on what the proper adjustment is for these gibs on the main ram. There. Again, I haven't run one of these since high school, so. But that looks like operation to me. So I think I'll call it there. Things are shaping up. sorry for the bad pun. It's coming along reasonably well as far as I'm concerned. Again, just trying to find time for it's a bit of a challenge. So next time we'll be working on the clapper box and the table, and then we'll try to get the motor installed in this thing and see if we can start making some chips. So just want to say thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, those of you who do. If you don't, well, thanks for stopping by, it's good to see you, and I'll see you next time.